Alrighty, so I had recorded a previous tutorial with the bouncing ball application where we use Pygame, uh, covering what I'm going to cover right now. But I figured maybe start you off a little small, if you will, and then go into that application. So what I want to talk a little bit about is something that I kind of touched upon in class, which is the fact that a function can return something to you. And so I'm going to start here by defining a function. I'm going to call it just, in this case, area uh, for a circle. So I'll call it area circle. And I just referred to this because it's actually quite a simple example, getting the area of a circle. To get the area of any circle, you just take its radius and you multiply it times pi and times itself. So just again to give you a little bit of reference here, area of a circle. That's just the formula, okay? It's not a big deal. It is a mathematical formula. It says that the area of a circle is equal to pi, which is a constant, 3.14 times the radius of the circle squared, where the radius is the distance from the center of a circle outward towards the edge of the circle. Or you can think of the diameter as how wide the circle is. The radius is half of that. And so if I enter here a radius of 5, for example, notice that gives me an area of 78.54. What is happening is that you're taking 5 and you're squaring it. So that would be 5 times 5 times pi, which in this case does show up. Oh, I don't have to do that. It's right there, pi, which is 3.14, and you get 78.54, which is where this number comes from. And if you enter any other number, so 10, you get again the area of a circle. And so we can actually code this function in Python without the graphics and without this little text box, but it would be the same. So that is what I'm going to code here, the area for a circle. Now, if you start thinking, okay, what do I need to get the area of a circle? Well, based on the formula, what we need, if I delete this, we needed the radius for that circle. And so in my function, I would include one parameter called rad, which is short for radius. You could actually, if you want, call it radius, not a big deal. I like to abbreviate to maybe save myself a little bit of typing, so I'll call it rad. And the area of a circle, which I can call area, equals pi, which, let me see here. I'm not quite sure this is, so Python can recognize that constant. Let me just look it up really quick because we might need to use the math class. There we go, Python pi constant and math.pi constant returns value of pi. I just want to see how they use it. Oh, you see, here it is. So we need to import the math library, and then this is how we would use it, math.pi. And so I'll go ahead and use it. Just I could put 3.14, which is not a big deal, but I do want to, if anything, provide you a little bit more libraries here. So import math, and we're gonna do math.pi times the radius squared, which I'm just gonna say times radius. And I want to test my method, my function. So I'm going to write my code in the main function or in the main method, where I'm going to say, let's ask the user for a radius. It is a whole number. Let's assume it's a whole number. So I'm going to use the int function that converts what the user enters to an integer, a whole number. And then I will use the input function, where I will ask the user to enter a radius, like that. And so if I run this, well, actually, right now I've defined two functions, but I have not executed either function. So I'm going to execute the main function on line 11. I do need to title this. So I'll go here to documents, and we are in the Python tutorials, and we're looking at functions. And so I'll call this just return. That's what we're covering. So it says enter a radius, so I'll enter 5. Now nothing shows up. That's because we're not done. We only asked for the radius. Now what we need to do on line 10 is send whatever the user enters. In this case, it would have been 5. So that means radius would have equaled 5. I want to send that to the area circle function on line 10. So I'm saying, hey, to this area circle function, I'm going to send you the radius that was entered by the user. That will be stored in this local variable, which we call parameters, called rad. So that means rad is going to be whatever the user enters. And we're going to get the area. And then what we can do is that we can return. Notice how when you write the word return, it changes color. That's because that's a reserved word within Python. I'm going to return the area. What that means is that when you execute the area circle function on line 13, you're going to give it a radius. It's going to give you something back, which I'm going to store in a variable here called a. So I'm going to say a equals whatever area circle returns when I send it the radius. Now, what I want to avoid, and only so that I'm not confusing you here, I'm trying to avoid giving them the same name. So if I'm going to call it radius here, I wouldn't want to call it radius over here. I can, but I'm trying to avoid the confusion that may arise. So this variable radius only exists in the main function, whereas this variable rad only exists in this area circle function. And the same can be said about a. It is a variable. It only exists here, and the same can be said about area. Area only exists in the area circle function. And then finally, in the main method, I'm going to print the area of the circle is comma a. So now we enter a radius, so 5, and it prints the area of the circle is 78.54, right? So in this case, it actually printed the whole values. That's okay. Which is what we have here with this calculator, online calculator for the area of a circle. If I put 5, that gives me 78.54. Now I can run it one more time and enter 10, and it should give me 314.16. But the biggest takeaway is that we have this function called area circle. You could call it area of a circle or circle area, whatever you want to call it. So I'm just giving it a name that is symbolic as to what it does. As a matter of fact, get area would probably be even more appropriate because it's returning an area. And so right here, I would have to change this to get area. So I ask for this in the main function, I ask for the radius, the user to enter a radius. And then on line 13, I'm saying to myself that a, the variable a, is going to equal what get area returns when I send it the radius that the user entered. And so if the user enters the number 10, that means that gets stored in this variable. And so I'm going to send get area, I'm going to send it the number 10, which then goes and is stored in this variable. So rad is 10. We say area equals 3.14, which is pi, times 10 times 10. And whatever that comes out to, we return that. And when I say return that, we return it over here to where I placed a call to get area. And so that gets stored in A. And we can basically send information from one function. From the main function, I can send the radius to the get area function over here. But then from the get area function, I can send the area, whatever it comes out to be, I can send it back to the main function where I store it in, once again, this variable. So a very important concept within Python and within functions, really with any programming language, is that they can return things to us. Now, um, I guess if I want to maybe avoid a little more confusion, let me go ahead and just kind of delete that for a minute and say that the main function is going to execute the, I accidentally, there we go. The get area is going to give me an area, and I'm just going to send it a radius so I can hard code this number here, 5. So get area, I'm sending it the number 5. What is it going to give me back? Because whatever that it gives me back is going to be stored in A. So that 5 would be stored in this parameter, rad, and you would multiply 3.14 times 5 times 5. That would give you the area, and you return that to the main function. So A is equal to whatever get area returns to me when I send it a 5. And so we're basically transferring information from one function to another, from the main function to the get area function, which is convenient. Okay, so now I've hard coded this. Now we can continue here. Let's maybe make another function, only to make sure that we feel more and more comfortable with this. So I'm gonna stick with maybe mathematical formulas because I think they're a little bit easier to see what's going on. Okay, so there's also the circumference or I guess perimeter or circumference formula for a circle. Notice that I can say here circumference. That's 2 times pi times the radius. And so if I put a radius of 5, the circumference, if I put a radius of 5, the circumference is 31.42. And so I could come in here and I can make a new function, and I would call it get circumference. I do need to provide this function a radius because it needs to perform the calculation. And so I could say circumference is equal to 2 times math.pi times the radius times rad. And then I can return circumference. And so again, we have now another function called the get circumference. It gives me the circumference. If I give it a radius, it gives me back the circumference for that circle. And the same for get area. As a matter of fact, you could also see how we are saying circumference equals all this, well, 2 times all this, and I'm returning that. So I could actually just avoid creating a whole new variable if I'm not going to use it other than to return it. I could just take all this and I could just return this. So it could be just one simple statement. And so notice that this, in this case, this function is not all that complicated. It's just an operation here. I could also do that here. I could, because area is equal to this, and I'm only returning that variable. I'm not doing anything other than to just return it. I could once again just cut it from here and paste it here. Oh, I accidentally. So I could paste it here and just return that. And yes, you start saying, okay, well then what's the purpose of these functions? You know, it's just a simple math formula. But let's say that you're trying to have a student study for an exam, and they're getting the areas and circumferences of all these circles. Well, we can just now, instead of having to do this every single time for every circle, notice that it's only one line of code, but there's some calculation here. All we have to do is just execute the method. By the way, here, instead of saying A equals get area, because I'm not using it for anything else, I could take this, cut it, and I could just place it here. And it says area of the circle is, and whatever get area returns when I give it a 5. And now we can see how it is convenient. The function itself is convenient because I could do it constantly. I could take this and I could just maybe run it a few times with different radiuses. So 10 or radii, 15. And notice how I have here the areas for those circles with radius 5, 10, and 15. And I could keep going. Whereas before I would have had to have written this over and over and over and over. Now I can just send the number. I can also get the circumference by printing the circumference. Clearly I can't spell circumference of the circle is, and then we'll say get circumference, and you'd send it, I'll send it a 5 for now. And if I run this, notice that it gives me the circumference is 31.41, which is correct. That's what I had in the calculator here that I pulled up from the internet. And you could do this all over and over and over. And so functions are convenient because they allow you to be able to reuse that same function over and over if you need to. All you need to do is give it a different argument, just like I'm doing here. And so you give your function a value, in this case a radius, and it gives you back the area. It returns to you the area for that circle. You give it a radius here for the circumference, it returns to you the circumference using the formula, 2 pi r. And so we start seeing how with functions, you can give them information, but they can also give you back information. And what I mean by that is that right here, for the get area function, I gave it a 5. That's what it means to have that in parentheses, that I'm giving get area 5. It is returning to me whatever the pi times 5 equals. And that's what I'm printing. So again, we're expanding our understanding of functions. This is just to get you a little bit more and more comfortable with what we can do with functions in Python.